день, мы продолжаем курс.
Hello, and welcome to our show. With us is Dr. Michael Lightman. Hello, everyone. Hello. And today we'd like to talk about leadership and management. And I'd like to run this comparison between a leader and a boss, a manager. And from this comparison, I hope that we will better understand who is a leader and who is a manager. Or what is a leader and what is a manager? To prepare myself for this show, I read a book by Oren Venice. He's a guru in everything that has to do with management, and he runs this kind of comparison. A manager supports and a leader develops. A manager is focused on the structure and the system, a leader on the people. A manager asks when and how, a leader asks what and why. A manager looks at the income, leader looks at the future. Manager does things right, a leader does the right things. And the question to you is, do you agree? And could you add something from your experience? What's the difference between a leader and a manager? Well, actually, this is right. And just to add that, a leader is a philosopher, is someone that paves the way. And a manager, he is the one that carries things out, realizes them. It's simply a person that knows how to organize things, how to organize people in order to carry out a certain task. It could be even a country leader, but he's a manager. So if we look a bit more deeply, to set the correct goals, and the goals have to be measurable, and something that we can't measure, we can't control, we can't manage. So that's a manager. A leader is the ability to foresee the future, to pass this vision on to the people, to the managers that take this vision and realize it into concrete plans and specifications, how to realize it. So, the abilities of a leader to see the future, are these some kind of natural abilities, or is it something that you can acquire these skills? No, people are born that way. So, you're born a leader? Yes. And not only leaders, but also good managers. You're born a good manager. These are completely different way of thinking, psychology, worldview, and so on. Suppose planning, time, resources, who's responsible for what, and a leader is not only responsible for the results, but he also has a personal responsibility. A leader directs people, he inspires them, motivates them. The question is, should a leader show his weaknesses? That he is a man too, and not some kind of unique machine. No, this is not required of a leader. A leader has to show the upper goal, the future goal. And a manager could be a minister, could be any kind of manager, could be a boss. He has to show that he knows how to control the situation, that he knows how to carry out concrete tasks, and he has to make sure that those carrying out their roles will be rewarded by him. Should people take an example from the leader, or should he remain in the Olympus? He actually has to remain in the Olympus. He has to inspire them actually from afar. from the height of his Olympus, where he is on purpose. He doesn't need that actually, but he has to be there on purpose in order to inspire the people. A manager has to know how to control those that he manages, and the leader has to see the complete picture without the specific details. How can you cultivate systemic thinking like a manager has? Or is it also something that comes from nature? It's all given by nature. These are people that know, perceive the world as one organic whole, and they want to know how is everything interconnected. And there are people that can't grasp it that way. For them, it's very unnatural. It's not a part of their general perception. They like to solve concrete questions. For them, small, specific tasks that consist of cause and consequence, for them that's clear. Yeah, there are even people, even though managers that, they manage projects, and there are those that can manage companies, governments, but that still does not make them leaders. Okay. And also that you're all the time, as a manager, you're all the time in contact with people, gather teams. So how should a leader relate to those under him? A leader does not relate to those that are subordinate to him. He passes his worldview on, his plans, his perspectives, and his attitude to his subordinates. You can't call them really subordinates, but his attitude to people, according to his idea, doesn't really interest him. He doesn't have to really take them into account. How to grasp these ideas, this is already the concern of his managers. A manager is appointed, and a leader, he grows from below. He could be an informal leader, actually. Do you agree? A manager is appointed, true, yeah, because you see who's capable of solving practical problems. And a leader, he becomes a leader because he is appointed by the upper providence or by chance. He stands out because he stands out. This is how he grows up. How he grows. It's a person with a philosophical perspective on life. It's a person that perceives the entire world as his own. Well, you're talking about leaders that... A leader could be informal, like in a classroom. We all know that in school you have leaders. Could be in a football team, could be in the yard. A certain group of people that perceive a certain person as the higher, kind of superior or something. And they tie themselves to that person, they feel tied to that person, and this kind of crowns them. There are many courses about how to become leaders. I studied this in the university, said that it turns out that you don't have a chance of becoming a leader, that you become a leader, it's something that you get from nature. You have to be a leader by nature, kind of. There are people that become leaders in and of themselves because they really aspire for that, but I don't really believe that that's possible. Here, there has to be something from above, some kind of... If we're talking about real leaders, a leader has to be accepted by the masses, by a certain mass of people that consider him to be superior to others, greater than others. To be a leader, is that a person's personal choice? It's not a person's choice. I think that, so it's not a conscious decision, I choose to be a leader. No, a person's born with that. Sometimes you even see it on little children, how they behave. He doesn't necessarily is good at school or at some work or someplace, but it's a gradual, under the influence of certain circumstances, these metamorphoses happen with him and he becomes a leader. So, going back to history, one of the most important qualities in leaders, for Jewish leaders, was modesty, like with Moses. Well, that's to all great people that are great because they don't grasp themselves as existing in and of themselves, but that they exist for a certain idea. And so, we also talk about wisdom, that they have a broad heart, but why modesty? Like I said, that a leader does not perceive anything of this world higher than the goal. And people can only be those that realize a goal. Meaning he sees himself as a conduit? Yes, no more than that. And he understands that all of his qualities were given to him by nature in order to achieve some higher kind of goal, and that's why he relates that way to himself, and that's why he is modest. It says that Moses had a heavy tongue. What does that mean? He didn't know how to talk to the people. He was a few heads higher, taller, so to speak, and therefore he had a hard time explaining himself to people, translating it into our day-to-day language. Yeah, these are all metaphors, right? But still, what does it mean that he is of heavy of tongue? He couldn't explain himself to people in a language that would be clear to them because he was several degrees higher than them. Does a leader have to learn how to speak? Narrate? If it's a real leader, then no. Not necessarily. But the thing is that he needs to be understood, but to a certain extent, so that his ideas will be, so people will be able to realize his ideas. To be a narrator, the art of it. I remember I was sitting next to my teacher on this one wedding at a table with all the distinguished people. And came up this one person to ask my teacher, what should he tell to give a small speech on this wedding? What should he say? And my teacher told him one or two sentences. He says, that's it. Don't need more than that. Thank you. This is enough for half an hour. Even though that, he had to speak for 5 minutes. It means that you give a person some, 2 words and he can make out of it. He can talk about it and, give a serious speech and inspire people and so on. It says that a leader is he who can raise other leaders. Do you agree? No. I don't really agree with that. We also see it from the leaders of the Bible. They weren't really concerned with that, engaged in it, or successful at it. So a leader doesn't have to be concerned with who's gonna come after me. A leader is someone who looks far ahead, and what he tries to pass on to those beneath him, he tries, but the measure to which he's understood, that's already a problem. And the measure to which he can educate his followers or something, that's also a problem. Because, like you said, that it's given from above. Yeah, exactly. It's given from above, and therefore it doesn't really depend on him. Because as a manager, I know that from the point of view of managing that every person and the organization, it's very important for him to be able to prepare another few people, that his abilities are measured by that, to prepare people that can replace him at any moment. It's unrelated to leaders. A leader is like he is appointed from above, so will his successors. Does a leader have to be charismatic? No. When we say charisma, we're talking about a person's quality, action, desire, by which he elevates himself, as if inflates himself. Makes himself look bigger, greater. A leader doesn't need that. A leader, in and of himself, is important, great, respected, because what he says is clear to everyone that that's true. Comes from the heart and is spoken maybe for centuries in advance. Okay, you answered some of these questions, but again, just to see that I understand correctly, the connection between leaders and the masses, the people, has to be single-sided. Yeah. A leader, he gives his vision, and he has to keep his distance with his subordinates. Exactly. I don't think that it's something that he has to do, but this is how it happens, because if he has the character of a leader, he can't mix with others. It doesn't happen. This is the nature of things. In order to lead, you need three things. In order to manage, time, talent, and desire in order to be a manager. I heard from you that a manager could be he that doesn't like managing. Is it true, and why? Well, because then he won't confuse people, he won't manipulate them. Management is good when you know what your goal is. You constantly develop more and more concrete ways of how to achieve that goal, and you know what people you have to position in order to realize that goal. So a good manager is someone who doesn't like doing it, he does it because it's necessary. Yeah. Otherwise, he'll take pleasure in digging in the work itself. So suppose that the company has to be more important to him than his desire to control others. Yeah, if I could leap to the end of that process, then that's the most important thing for me. I don't like giving orders. I like achieving goals. To what extent does a manager or a leader have to take into consideration the opinion of the people? Taking the opinion of the people into account only when it's necessary in order to solve some specific local problem, but that's it. So the management should be by hierarchy. Of course, management should be by hierarchy. That's natural. Yeah, but the collective has to nonetheless be a collective. It has to care for it has to make sure that the goal, the task will be clear, how to come to solving this problem or reach the goal, and it has to be agreed by upon everyone and for everyone. You're already talking about transparency, but do I have to take into consideration the opinion of all people? There's a company, 200 people. You can have this kind of gathering, maybe not even one, in order to explain the necessity of the task. So to listen to the opinion of people, but still decide. It's good to listen, and it's good for those that you manage, and it's also good for those that are being managed for them to know where we headed, because always there are certain mistakes and the ability to correct them, and they will themselves will explain to management how. So if you have to solve some serious problem where there is a lot of unknown information and people don't have that information, then it's being broken down into certain sections or cuts, and you have to make it so that the collective will be drawn into the realization. Can dictators be considered leaders, or leaders are those that are followed willingly? Necessarily. A dictator can't be a leader. He uses force in order to suppress others. But a true leader uses his idea for people to cleave on to it. Meaning a real leader lifts people to his idea, and a dictator, he suppresses from above down those under him. What should a manager think about? What has to be said before his eyes? What should his attitude towards himself be? A manager has to think how to correctly organize the collective in order to realize the task. And his attitude toward himself, that people will listen to him and will do what he says, but not to suppress. If they understand that it's possible to do it in some other way, that they'll come and tell him and advise him. What does a manager do if he has a bad mood and he knows that he can pass it on to those that he manages? He has to be more human with them, meaning to show them that he's a human being too, and that he also goes through different kinds of moods. Are there different technologies for a person to rise above his mood? It's very complicated, and I don't think that it's possible in all cases. You have to be understood. You have to educate the collective in such a way that they will understand that you're a human being. Is it important for a leader to admit his mistakes? For a leader, practically there can't be mistakes. But if he considers that it's necessary to show that maybe he made a mistake, then he has to do it publicly and in a way that it will be appreciated as an advantage. So for a manager, it's not a problem to show his shortcomings, but for a leader, for a manager, it's not a problem. For a leader, it should be a problem because all of us walk under God, so to speak, and therefore mistakes could happen everywhere. Should a leader know how to take risks? A leader has to choose the best, most trustworthy path, because by that he leads his herd towards some higher goal, and he's not allowed to put them at risk. How to relate to those workers that don't work well? What effective methods of punishment are there? The most effective thing is the collective. The collective If the collective is set correctly, then the tiniest thing that a person didn't complete on his part will immediately be felt by the collective and perceived by it in a negative kind of feedback. Many times you say that women can manage better than men. How come? Women, as opposed to men, can manage many different kinds of work. See what she does at home. Let a person wash the house, and he won't complete it in a month. Give it to a woman, and one day she'll do it excellently. Meaning a woman, she's built for realizing small tasks, meaning on a smaller scale, but various tasks. How do women and men managers differ? How do men and women leaders differ? I don't think that they differ in any way, because it's no longer a man or a woman then. It's a person that lives by an idea that is unrelated to the difference in gender. There are dozens of nations in the world. Should every nation have their own type of leader? I think that today it's all very mixed up, and there's no longer such a concept as a leader, as a herdsman. I think that's all coming to an end, and in the next generation we will already have spiritual leaders. So exactly about that. Do you agree that in a state of chaos the role of a leader will grow, or the role of the collective? The masses can't take a decision. The common people can't take a decision as a collective. You have to explain to them why, how, meaning don't simply give them orders under gunpoint, but society is made in order to realize, carry out. Can a group of people be leaders, but not one person? There could be a group of managers, but leader is one. Meaning in the future, there will always be one leader. Yes, he'll be one and for all of humanity. In the past, God chose leaders. How do you choose today? Today, God will choose leaders as well. A person that will be exalted to the measure to which he will be heard, that people will look at him, not because this is what the police will tell you to do, or the KGB or someone else, but because by that he will draw the attention of masses of different nations, and that will be a leader. You have to look at history. In the past there were more leaders. At least this is how it feels. Today there's a kind of crisis in leadership. What's the direction? Again, the direction is that there has to appear one leader in every generation, and he will be the leader of the entire world. It's an ideological direction of the development of the world. And after that, under him, there will be groups of people that will develop this idea of his, the direction, and to bring this idea down to the level of its realization, to the level of projects and so on. God, is he a leader, or to the contrary, he's in complete concealment? No, he's in complete concealment. It's the upper integral force of nature, but that acts through leaders, through managers, and actually through each and every person, in every person. Okay, many psychologists say that the time of leader heroes has passed, and today it's more leader-partner type of leadership who collects a team of leaders, and I'm not arguing with them. Okay, so Blitz. 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes left. Short questions, short answers, personal questions to you about leadership. Do you consider yourself to be a leader? Yes. What's the best quality of a leader that you can say about yourself? Unchanging goal that I point at in this direction for all. Were you always a leader, or it came with time? I think that this is how I was born. Who would you choose today as leader? I don't know. I'm not familiar. I don't take that much interest in people to say that. Simply a person who knows where should the world head, develop into, and understands that he is under the influence of the upper force, and he's only a mediator. He can be a leader. But for that, you have to have persistence. Which of the leaders of the past do you respect? Besides the leaders of the times of the Bible? The great leaders from the Torah from all times, because the Torah is the method of the development of our world. Do you consider yourself to be as a charismatic person? No. In relation to my students, to those that are close to me, I try to hide nothing for them to see all of my weaknesses, qualities, and I think that I don't have to pose. A leader doesn't have to hide, or his idea is what has to work, not he himself. He's not a manager, he's not a boss. Do you always prepare yourself for public speeches? Never, ever. Maybe it's a problem. And many times I had such cases where 15-20 minutes, I gave a certain idea in 15-20 minutes. I explained a certain idea that I came to a public lecture with, and I had nothing left to say. And then I give the mic to the listeners, and they start controlling me, managing me. Do you experience pleasure when you convince someone? I don't think that it's a pleasure that comes from convincing someone. I think that it's a pleasure that comes from the purpose of creation, the system of creation, that it becomes clearer and clearer to a broader circle of listeners. What do you know how to do best and how to develop this habit? I know best. I don't know anything anymore. Really, I don't know anything. I don't even think that I have to know how to do something. To the measure to which I know, I teach. But besides that, I work on materials, again, in order to teach. What success are you really proud of? Achievement. That I have founded this organization, of course with the help of my students. That explains to humanity its next corrected uppermost goal. Something that you didn't succeed at, and what conclusions did you draw? Many small many things that I didn't succeed in. That's my life, but I don't think that I could have done it any differently. And only the upper force determines all of our steps. Was your teacher a leader? No. For us, for his teacher, for his student, he was an absolute leader. But by nature, no, he was not a leader. His father, I think, was a leader. Thank you very much for your very earnest answers, and until we meet again, thank you very much.